So Mary Ellen, I'm turning it over to you, and you tell me
Oh.
what displayed and when you want it.
All right. Well, there's only the two things, right?
I did do the whole text of the, yes,
Oh,
correct.
okay, good. Well, I thought I would say a little prayer from the heart. Dear Lord, please help me not to screw this up. I would very much appreciate it. Thank you. Amen. This is the prayer I always pray when I'm doing something like this. I just thought I'd say it out loud now because I'm nervous. I haven't done this in a long time. So my name is Mary Ellen Wofford. I am a member of All Saints for 20 years. I have two grown children and two grandsons. And I worked at Mayo Clinic for 21 years or 22 years. And I worked at what was then University Medical Center for 21 years. I feel like I worked my whole life. And also I have a very college career because it took me 9 years to get my BA, kind of like John Belushi in Animal House. And I went to Stetson in DeLand, and I went to JU here, and I went to FSCJ where I did get an associate's degree, and I went to UNF and I got my bachelor's in history, which I used to be a medical secretary. So that, and when I first went to All Saints, I came from a Baptist background. And they don't like you to ask questions when you're a Baptist. So I went over to the Episcopal side because they like when you ask questions. So that's why I did that. And the person who made the most impression on me when I first went to All Saints, a lot of you probably know him, Father George Young Jr.
Yeah.
The father of Bishop Young. I really enjoyed his classes, and he would teach lectionary classes. So if you went to the late service, you would hear all of George's explanations, and you would be the star of the. Well, I know he was going to say that. I knew it. But George, I asked George one time because I've never really gotten into the parables before. But George said that parables, the only thing they're really supposed to do is make you think. Think about what's being said, what it involves. And that's kind of how I went about this presentation. So I hope it's okay for you guys. What makes Smith's parables mysterious or difficult is the challenge to look into the hidden aspect of our own values, our own reaction to them should be resistance, but not acceptance. So because we're supposed to figure out what's really at the heart of the parable, is my understanding. In Jesus's time, Jews of Jesus' time knew a parable was more than a restatement of common knowledge. I read part of a book by Amy Jill Levine called Short Stories by Jesus. Some of you might know it. It's all about the parables. And she said they knew that parables were there to prompt them to see the world in a different way, to challenge, to remind, provoke, refine, confront, disturb. They're supposed to disturb us. So you want to put up the parable, Mr.
Okay.
Michael, please? And I really felt like I should have done the first part of this chapter about the young man with a property dispute. But I guess I wasn't supposed to, so I didn't.
Right.
Who would like to read the parable for us? Susan, you want to read the parable? Can you see it?
Sure.
Thank you.
Then he told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly, and he thought to himself, what should I do? For I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you. And the things you have prepared, whose will they be?
Thank you. Thank you. That was well read.
Thank you.
Does anybody else feel that Luke put a little bit of snark in there when he has him talking to himself? And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. I think Luke was pulling our leg a little bit with that. He does that in several passages, but this one is just this guy there sitting there talking to his soul. But it's a scary one too, because at the end, the guy dies. Everything he had is gone to somebody else. So on the surface of it, that seems to state the problem very well. I mean, the guy is greedy. He thinks of nobody else, and he's going to die, and he's not going to have any of those treasures in heaven. So that was what I started out with. I read an article by a guy named G. Connor on the online Bible study tools, who wrote an essay entitled, Why Does the Parable of the Rich Fool Seem Unfair to Us? And he goes on to say he thinks the fool is all alone in his life and counts his belongings as a sign of a successful life. Well, yeah, I think he does. And I think we still do that today. If people have a lot of money, we think they're successful. In reality, he had no one he wanted to share his wealth with. So he was a materialist, and he idolized his belongings. So the materialism and the idolizing material things speaks very much to our current life, doesn't it? It speaks to people who, you got to work. Kill yourself working, like my dad did. I mean, because you think that money is a sign of success, that owning a lot of stuff that's worth something is a success. I own a lot of stuff, but it's not worth anything, so I'm not a success. You should not put making money and having things as your first priority, never. We also need the strength that comes from community. Jesus liked communities. I know he went away by himself sometimes to get away from the masses, but he traveled with 12 guys all the time he was out preaching. It's like having your own little posse, like a rock singer. And he thought people in Christian communities or Jewish communities would have to be in community. You can't really do the Christian walk without being in a community. At least that was what he said. So it kind of hits on that, build up your treasures in heaven. As a Baptist, I heard that a lot. Build up your treasures in heaven. And I think that is what we do every time we help someone, or we feed somebody who's hungry, or we loan a car to somebody who's had a bad accident and their car has to be fixed. That happened to me. My best friend loaned me her car for months. So that's the treasures you build up. The everyday inner workings with your community at church, your community in the city you live in, even in the state and the federal government. I mean, you do that. You have a community. And community is very important. Oh no, my pages are trying to fall down. Oh no, I knew I should have gotten a desk. Oh, whoa, Nelly. Okay, that's right. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. The best thing I found. Wait a minute. Wait, that's okay. And oh, I wanted to talk a bit about why we would feel that the parable is unfair. I mean, there are a lot of parables where I think the person, one of the people in there, like Martha and Mary, I always think, well, somebody had to make food for those guys that all came in unexpectedly. So Martha does it. And Mary prefers to sit at the feet of Jesus to learn from him. So I think I've come to the conclusion on that Martha and Mary are both doing what God wants them to do. And feeding people and helping them relax. It's good. It's one of the things we should do. But we also need to sit and listen. So I think Mary and Martha are actually kind of two halves of the same person that God wants us to be. I don't know if that's true or not, but that is how I feel about it. So that was Mr. Connor. Then, this is one of my favorite things. I can't read my own writing. Hold on a second, I gotta find it. There we go, 6, 7. Oh, that's cool. I can't read my, I did Roman numerals, I can't read them either. I guess you can take the parable down now, or do we need to leave it up, you guys?
We all good or you need?
There is a little more to it, isn't there?
Well,
Yeah.
there's a whole first part about the young man who has a property dispute with his father.
Well, the next line just says, so it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God.
Kind of a closing.
And Mary Ellen, you were asking about, why should anyone feel sorry for the man? And, the thought that occurred to me, because you pointed out where he got a little bit, lighthearted and kind of arrogant with, eat, drink, be merry. You don't worry about anything. But if you go back before that, he got these crops somehow. I mean, he put in labor, he put in time, and he brought in the crops. And so now he has this problem about, where can I store everything? So he's put up in all of this effort and time. And then, this very night, God says to him, your life is being demanded of you. So that's one reason I feel a little bit of sympathy for the man, just because of the timing of things.
But I'm assuming he had other people plant the crops for him. Because he's a rich guy. He doesn't plant his own crops. Or maybe he does. I think most rich people don't do their own physical labor. I've never been rich, so I don't know, but that's just what I think.
Mhm.
So that I do think I feel sorry for a lot of people. I feel sorry for the older brother in the prodigal son. I know what that is. You stay home, you do all the work, and then your brother comes home and he's welcome like a king, and you've been there the whole time. So yeah, I've been there. I've been there. So there was an article I read called "Wealth in Scriptures: Blessing or Burdens," and the main thing is Christianity has a broad range of beliefs regarding wealth, regarding money. We got people like Joel Osteen and his Church of the Prosperity Gospel. which who see wealth as a sure sign of God's blessing. And then you have almost a polar opposite for like the Mennonite Amish, and they think money is evil and temptation that should be avoided. That's a pretty big stretch across all these people that are called Christians. I've never understood the prosperity gospel. I don't know if any of you have, but it just does not seem to line up with Christian goals, the goals that Jesus gave us anyway. I'll say that.
It almost
And-
seems more convenient, doesn't it? It gives you an out for what you probably would prefer to do. But yeah, like our rich man here.
Yeah,
And there is a difference between the gospel of prosperity, which, as you, Joel Osteen is, one of the people who preached that. Andrew Carnegie, wrote the book, The Gospel of Wealth. But the premise of that book was that if you happen, for whatever reason, to have accumulated some wealth in your life, you really shouldn't just be waiting and leaving it to your heirs. You should be spending it on causes that can help other people while you're still alive. So, so the gospel of wealth is very different from the gospel of prosperity. Which basically says, hang on to everything and spend it on yourself. So
exactly.
God loves you because you're rich. You
See that? I don't know how you can even say that. God doesn't love you because you're rich or poor. God just loves you. Don't understand that. All right. Also, God's wealth is not money itself, but rather the diversity and splendor of creation. That's the wealth that God spreads among us all. Saint Clement of Alexandria said, in themselves, riches are blameless, but if coupled with greed, they can suffocate the seed of true love, a true life, not true love. Could suffocate the true love too, but greed ruins so many things in our lives, and we just need to be aware of it. It's like Father Donovan at All Saints is always talking about how he must idolize his cell phone because he has it on him at all times. In fact, it even went off when he was preaching one Sunday. So, but he uses it for his job. So to me, that's not idolizing the phone. He's just using it, but he likes to make a joke about it. So I do know people who idolize their phones or their car or their house, but it's just stuff. It's like when you read about a big disaster and everybody gets out okay. The property is destroyed, but the people are there, they're safe. That is a good outcome. Things can always be replaced. People can't, pets can't. So we have to keep our eye on the creation part of our beliefs. We read a book in EFM, were you there, Michael, where we learned that creation is still ongoing. Creation has never stopped. It just keeps going. Did you read that one?
I did not.
Okay, that was a good one. You might get to read it next year.
I was going to ask if that was a year 3 or year 4 book, or if it was one of your interlude books. Interlude?
Could have been an interlude book. You're absolutely right. I'll have to ask Jody because she remembers every single book she's ever read in her life.
Yes.
Who's this?
Well, we have benefited. Mary Ellen referred to Jody Green, who is a member at San Jose, and she was the one who presented with Joe first, and then with Laura Lane, and she just thoroughly researches everything, reads voraciously.
She does, and she remembers everything she reads. That's the best part. I read a lot, but I don't remember all of it.
She remembers everything you say to her, which can be problematic.
Yes, it's almost like she has an eidetic memory, but I don't
Yes.
think she does. She's just very smart lady. He also talked about that when we're in this relationship with God and we're greedy, we're serving someone besides God. We're serving either ourselves or just the accumulation. We're accumulating things. It's like the more things you have, the bigger house you have to put them in. And when you have a little house and a lot of stuff, your life goes downhill. This was this blessing or burden was from the Catholic Social Thought podcast by a guy named Andrer Rogobetti. I like his last name. He talked about Jesus used both the young man in the first part of the reading that I didn't put in here, that had the property dispute with his brother. And Jesus said, "That's not what I do, man. Go away." And Jesus used both the young man that we had met earlier in the parable, before the parable, with the property dispute, and the rich fool, both to demonstrate how greed can cause one to fall from God's grace. When you don't do what God wants you to do, sometimes there's a reaction you don't like. Oh, and this was my favorite thing I discovered while doing this. It was so much, it just hit me the right way. Right. Oh. Okay, so we're going to go back to 2 minutes. I read part of a sermon that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had delivered in 1967 in Chicago. And because I'm a great admirer of his, I was able to see this sermon. And the title of the sermon was "Why Jesus Called a Man a Fool." Can't you just imagine hearing him say that? And he says in his sermon that Jesus called the man a fool because he allowed the means by which he lived to outdistance the ends for which he lived. In other words, he was living for the wrong thing. Dr. King said there were 2 divisions in people's lives. There's the within and the without. The within is the realm of spiritual ends expressed in art, literature, religion, or morality. But when it's outside of you, it's a complex of devices, of mechanisms and instrumentality by which we live the physical stuff that's necessary for us to exist. So he says we must always keep these apart, because he says to keep a sharp line between the two. This man was a fool because he did not keep that separation in his life. All righty. We got 4 warnings about what not to do. All right. It's from Christianity.com, and it's written by a husband and wife team named Brett and Becca Mooney. And the first one is, do not equate our personal worth with wealth, which I think happens a lot. It becomes part of you if you don't have enough money to live decently. We recently had a class in sacred ground, and that's one thing that really needs to be fixed. I mean, people are working 2 or 3 jobs and they're not getting enough money to live on. That ought to be a sin. But so that's, do not equate your personal worth with wealth. You're worth more than money. You are worth Jesus' sacrifice. So I don't understand the money. Do not place our security or happiness in the temporary, which is this life we're in right now. Not the afterlife, but this life, the temporary. I really don't think of myself as temporary, but I guess we all are. So, and then this one is so hard. I was a single mother with 2 children. This is hard. It says, Don't worry about how your basic needs will be met. Anxiety about our basic needs is the opposite of faith. But you really can't help it sometimes, right? You
Right.
have to worry about when other people dependent on you, you have to worry about how you're going to feed them and clothe them and shelter them. And so when you don't have a lot of money, that's a big deal. So I have problems with that one. I do have anxious moments.
Well, it
So-
doesn't, I agree, except that I have found that worry as I might, it doesn't make any, it doesn't help.
It doesn't.
It-
You are
the-
absolutely
What
right.
it does is wear me out. Yeah. So,
I know. It's
It
just,
was significant to me that you said, do not worry about your personal needs, because that's different than single mom or two-parent household, and your child doesn't want this brand of jeans, they want this other brand of jeans, they want the cell phone that has all the bells and whistles. That's not the same thing as worrying about your needs, about just your next meal or shelter
oh yeah.
or basics.
Well, it's worrying about whether you're going to pay your light bill or your telephone bill, or maybe you can pay the telephone bill and the water bill, and they won't cut off your lights as long as you're paying on the water. That's the kind of things I had to go through. You pay one bill one month, and the next month you pay another bill because you just don't have enough money. So I empathize with those people. Yeah, but I don't want to be the opposite of faith. So I'm old now and I'm retired, so I think I can do that better, but just because I don't have as many dependents as I did then. I only have me and 8 cats. And then the last thing he said was, do not miss the opportunity to have wealth in heaven. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, it's not the kind of wealth that we think about, but Jesus says there are mansions in his Father's house. And somebody just came in, sorry. That's the kind of wealth I want to have in heaven, if I get there, please, Lord. Someplace where love and caring for people are appreciated, and I think that's heaven. I think that builds up your wealth. And he also says we can be generous with our time, hearts, words, hospitality, prayers, forgiveness, love, relationships, careers, and more. We can be generous. If you're like me, you don't have a lot of money, you can share all these other things. That also goes to build up your loot in heaven. Everything you do that is a command by Jesus, I feel. Somebody up there is, when I was a little girl, I used to think every time I did something bad, they marked it down. But now I've changed. As I'm older and getting ready to go to heaven someday soon, I think they mark the good things we do, not the bad things. That was the Baptist. They just want to punish you all the time. He says the fool's vision was too small. Too small. He didn't look out into the world. It was too small. It was right on him. So he lost it all.
Mary Ellen, when you mentioned trying to be more aware of having wealth when we're in heaven, for those of you who were at St. John's 3 years ago, you might remember Dr. Mary Neal, who came and spoke to us. And this is a woman who was in a kayak in South America, went over a waterfall. Her kayak went underwater, got lodged in rocks, and she was underwater for 30 minutes. And so presumed dead. But she had one of those experiences where she was completely out of touch on earth for quite a while, but then somehow came back. And she talked about her experience being in heaven. And sometimes I tend to dismiss some people like that who, oh, they just dreamt something. Hers was incredibly convincing. But the reason I mention it is because she spoke of things like the incredible colors, but she couldn't really describe the colors to us because they were hues that we don't even have. So she couldn't say, well, it was a shade of green. She said it was just very colorful, but she couldn't describe it to us. And she also talked about this overwhelming sense of peace. You know,
Oh,
I feel
yeah.
completely belong there. She never once spoke about, you know, mansions or rose paid in gold, right? There are different old gospel songs, right? Some of those. That, you know, she didn't talk about anything like that. She simply talked about the essence of being there and the sense that she had, and not possessions or not what the place
Right.
looked. So
Wow.
What would a spiritual being have a need for a mansion?
right.
Right. That is right. Frack. Sorry, I pulled out my earpiece. So that's an amazing story, Michael.
It's pretty amazing because, like I said, I don't always tend to buy into that kind of story, but hers was pretty, just the physical part of it, just the amount of time that she was underwater. I don't see any way she could have been still alive.
Right.
Just proves God still does miracles. I would love to have seen the colors she saw, though. That would be, and the feeling of peace. Wow. I think that was a blessing for her, even though she almost died. Wow.
In some ways, yes, but she also told how when she did come back, there were certain things she remembered. And one of them was that her oldest child was going to die. And he did so 2 or 3 years later.
Oh, wow.
She
Now
never,
that's a bummer.
she never spoke to him about it because, you know, what do you say? You know, well, when I was in heaven, this is what I found out. So, but she said she carried that with her, you know, that
Yeah.
happened.
It's like Mary carrying the knowledge of Jesus in her heart. For much the same reason, I guess. Sad end to that story there, Michael.
Well, you know, you do what you can.
Yeah, you do what you can. Yeah. All right. Now I'm to my favorite part. I found this Hebrew phrase. It's called Tikkun Olam. And it means in Hebrew to repair the world.
You ready?
Yeah, so people can see how to spell it and stuff. Thank you, Michael.
Share
The
screen.
repair of the world, specifically, it means human participation in repairing the wrong in the world. It's not, to me, the idea of repairing the world is just an awesome idea. I mean, the things that we have seen in the past couple of years, seems like we need a lot of things repaired. So this was pretty close to my heart. No one knows when this phrase first entered in the Hebrew language, but it was around during the time of Jesus. And for Jesus, for Jews, it was a commandment involving work for the improvement of society. It is not a term that promises heavenly blessings or stars in your crown. Rather, it is the common command of God to participate in making the world a better place right now, to participate, to embrace Tikkun Olam. It involves an awareness of your own community and awareness of your neighbors. It's all about having a heart and mind of presence, as in presence. Presence in this instance is about serving each other and seeing the needs of others and responding out of our abundance of blessings. he thinks we should all do, if we have an abundance, we need to share it. No matter what it's an abundance of ears of corn, abundance of money, abundance of cats. Anybody want a cat? So it's just about taking care of the world. It was just fascinated me. And Jesus, what is this the way to live? Jesus, oh, okay. That was what he said. Oh, he also said, and I don't do math. I know you folks don't know me, but I don't do math. Something's missing. But he did this equation. It's production plus profits plus possessions does not equal God's plan for us. That's really, I mean, Jesus says over and over, I have nothing to do with wealth. I don't do money. I don't do possessions. I'm walking around here in one white, long, raggy thing and a pair of sandals. Money, possessions are not important. And these poor guys, this poor rich guy in the parable just couldn't see it. So he's actually breaking a commandment for them to take care of people. That's what this Tikkun Olam is. And the presence is gone. Okay, we got rid of that one. And then I picked up something by a woman named Susan Shaw, who's a professor of women, gender, and sexuality at Oregon State. I just saw them lost the other night. And is ordained as a Baptist minister too. So she had an opinion essay in Baptist News Global, Baptist News, to practice Tikkun Olam. So what she says is that one thing you do with that is repairing, take care of emergencies, make sure basic human needs are met, especially for the marginalized. And that's what Jesus was always talking about. Feed the hungry, take care of the widows and orphans, do all of those things that Jesus told us to do. Give them a place to live, welcome the stranger, hospitality. I came to see, what's his name, John Crowson, talk down at the Cathedral, and he talked about hospitality and how it's interwoven with Christianity. Pretty neat talk if he ever comes back. The next thing to do is tackle the eyesores. And that makes a little list. Racism is an eyesore. The numbers of missing and murdered Indigenous women, which is very high, is an eyesore. The mistreatment and exclusion of trans people is an eyesore. Repairing the world means we have to work on these eyesores. I kind of like to call them heart sores, because sometimes they just hurt your heart. Until some of these things are eliminated, the repairs will be difficult. So here's what we need to do to tackle the problems, the eyesores, the heart sores. We need to vote. We need to campaign. We need to lobby. We need to educate. We need to resist. And then she adds on, number 3, build on strength. We can increase our power if we work together, if we can figure out how to work with one another. This seems especially appropriate in this time in American history because we're very divided. We're not working together. It's a sad state, but I think we can get past it. With Jesus' help, I know we can. And this one is work for revitalization without gentrification. I don't know if you probably know all about this, but I lived in Riverside when my daughter was very young, and we paid $65 a month for it was basically a 2-room apartment over little grocery store on Herschel Street. And it was $65 a month. That same apartment goes for $600 a month now because it's been gentrified. So all the people who were living there when I lived there have had to move on because the houses weren't gentrified for them. It was to make money for people. So all these people got uprooted over the years and had to move to other places. And now I don't even know where the cheapest place in town is to live. But back then I did. So that is something we need to work on. Work outward in all directions. Engage our current partners and also develop new partners. These are current partners to work with on these. We really want to do Tikkun Olam. We need to build up partnerships with people. Like I went to a class by Second Street Ministries up on Main Street, and they were pretty interesting. That was good. That would be a good place to build up some connections. Who do we want to be? I'm sorry, go ahead, Michael.
Marilyn, I wanted you to speak to something that you and I had talked about, or that you were letting me know about, and it was not so much the meaning of Tikkun Olam, but how it's kind of been changed by people who have tried to adopt it, but they're not really true to it.
Well, yeah, lots of people. In fact, Jody knew the word. She says it's helping people. It's helping society, and so this phrase has been, I guess, co-opted by people who are not Jewish. But it's good people who want to work for everyone to have the basic needs of their lives, or they want to help them get registered to vote, or they want to anyway, it's been taken over. So it's no longer just a Jewish saying. It's for everybody. And I'm sure if we all hang around soon enough, we'll be hearing it. Somebody will want to what is it they call when they erase you, you know? So yeah, you'll hear it a lot in social work, things like that. So it's a dream to have it work. I admit that, but it's a good dream.
I'm just curious that when we hear it, will we be hearing it in a correct context? Because when you mentioned that to me, it made me think of a Japanese word, kaizen, which if you simply translate means continuous improvement. And the way I came across it was at an education conference, for teachers that talked about, that's our goal. We want kaizen. So you can point around the room, this student's making kaizen, this one needs to improve their kaizen. We need this continuous improvement. Except when I had never heard the term, so I looked into it, and it's actually a Japanese business philosophy that talks about how to improve the processes in companies like manufacturers in ways that involve all the employees. So yes, it does mean continuous improvement, but would never be applied to an individual. That just doesn't make any sense at all. And I just wondered if this might be somewhat the same in how people, I like the word you said, co-opt, how people co-opt this idea of Tikkun Olam.
Well, as we gotta mess it up. I asked my son-in-law, who's Jewish, and he had never heard of it. But then he didn't go to temple school very much when he was young. So that was a dead end there. Who do we want to be? I don't know about you guys, but I'd like to be a loving, gentle, patient, self-controlled, which is not always my optimal mode, person. I want to love people. I want to take care of them if they need something. And I think we all do. For all Christians, we want to help people. whether it's Tikkun Olam or Kinzen. What was that you said, Mike? Kaizen? Kaizen. We want to help people. That's the thing that Jesus told us to do. We want to help them. Oh, wait, I turn the page. Oh, I forgot to read this to you guys. Isaiah 58. This is a good one. Your ancient ruins shall be rebuilt. You shall raise up the foundations of many generations. You shall be called the repairer of the breach, the restorer of streets to live on. I think that's a wonderful passage, and I'd love to be called the repairer of the breach. I don't know if I'd be a very good one, but I would like to. So I have a conclusion, but I want to know if you guys want to talk about any of this. I know I threw a lot of things at you. I'm sorry. Michael's hiding his head.
You're looking at me from the side computer. See? And this is all because of John Pickell, and then he didn't show up tonight, but I have this second computer. So no, I was not hiding my head from you.
Okay. Well, you were just doing like this. Like your head hurt. Sorry. Does anybody have anything to say about the parable? I never really liked this parable before, but now I like it more because I found out about Tikkun Olam.
Mhm.
That was a little jewel to find. It just blew my mind. Okay, it just blew my mind. So perfect. Anybody else got anything to say? You guys may get out early tonight. I'm sorry, I have papers. I went to try to find some 3x5 cards and I could not find any. Because that's how I was taught, in high school. You put your things down on your card and then you go 1-1. I saw somebody doing that the other night. So sorry, the papers keep getting out of hand. Well, then I'm going to go on to my conclusion. As Christians, we are called to be the ministers of reconciliation, to love in the face of hate, to repair the world. We are called to put selfishness aside, to side with the vulnerable as God does, to be meek, merciful, and peaceful, and to bring about liberation. And I didn't even think I'd get the liberation, but yeah, that's what it said. Dr. Shaw said in her essay, being the people of God is hard work. And I agree with that. Being a person of God is hard work and it's easy to fail. The rich fool is our parable. He thought no one but himself. Oh, the rich fool in our parable thought of no one but himself. He sinned by not sharing his abundance with those in need, according to Tikkun Olam, law. He could not see the needs of others. It's like he was spiritually blinded, or maybe he had horses used to wear these so they wouldn't go off to the side. He had blinders on. Jesus called the rich man a fool. Dr. King called the rich man a fool. I don't feel wise enough to call him a fool, but I will say he made a poor life choice. And I think that is the end. Q&A time. Or, just say whatever you want.
Mary Ellen, thanks. There is for the Muslims, there is another word that is similar to Tikkun Olam. And I wonder if we don't have it as Christians, we just tend to get wordier. Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly. I mean,
Yes,
it's kind of a lot of words, but it's the same instruction.
it's the same instructions. And that was, that was John Adams' favorite verse.
Is that right?
Yeah, he kept it on his desk in the White House
Micah?
or whatever he was in. I don't think he was in the White House, was he?
They may have been building it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. It was early on.
Yeah.
But that was his favorite verse. I always liked him a little better after that. Well, he was kind of obnoxious, but he had his good sides. I love the way he's portrayed in 1776. Nobody's seen. You like it? Yes, ma'am, please. Christine.
Hi, so sorry to be late. Please pardon our rudeness. We had another gig.
That's okay.
Did you all talk about the last verse? This is how it will be with anyone who stores up things for himself, but is not rich towards God.
No, we can talk about that. I just didn't think my reading was supposed to go through there. I'm so sorry. Because I'm a doofus, okay? Yeah, you want to talk about it? Please, let's talk.
Well,
You start.
Is God going to set fire to our barns or demand our lives? There are an awful lot of people who store up things for themselves. Are all the billionaires doomed?
It depends on what they do with their billions. We can't judge people like that, I guess. Judge not lest you be judged. And I have friends that have some things, but I mean, the 1% that controls like 80% of the wealth in the world, those are the people that might not get into heaven. And there's not very many of them, so they can also change.
The Andrew Carnegie example is a good one.
Yeah, I thought that was good.
Yeah.
Yes. And he did, he built libraries and stuff like that.
Yeah.
To
Well,
help
not
the
only
people.
libraries, he built our library, our first one in Jacksonville.
Really?
Yes.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
I used to work for the darn library.
Now the home of the Bedell Law Firm.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh, that ugly building? That ugly
Well-
70s building?
No. The one corner across the street from it was the first one. It looks like a miniature Greek temple with a lot of brass trim.
Yeah, it's much more
Yeah.
classy. So,
Much more classy, yes. Well, I worked at the one downtown when it was the Hayden Burns Library. It
Yeah.
was very modern. I always thought it was just not very attractive.
Christine, I wondered about that verse. I did not put a lot of thought in it, I'll admit, but I did look at different versions to see how it was said, because I wasn't quite clear, what does it mean to be rich toward God? I wasn't, because I'm thinking, well, surely lots of preachers would use that when it's not for the annual giving, if that's what means toward God meant. But the New Living Translation made the most sense to me, because it says a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. And
That's
so
softer. That's
That is a paraphrase. The Living Bibles are paraphrased. They're made so we can understand them better.
I don't know that it's softer, but it makes more sense to me that, okay, it's not talking about you have to tithe. That's not what this verse is about. It has to do with, if you are not building your relationship with God, if you're not maintaining that, then whatever wealth you accumulate is just not going to be of much help to you.
Yeah. So it says basically the same thing it said earlier in that.
Everything else, the King James, the New King James, they all use that same phrase, not rich toward God. And I was puzzled by that phrase.
This is strangely appropriate for the pledging season.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm contrasting this to the one with a calling a disciple and said you to give up everything you've got and follow
Follow
me.
me.
It's certainly possible for a person to be wealthy and still do a tremendous amount of good.
Yes, yes, that
So-
is very true. Like Mr. Carnegie,
Yeah.
that is very true.
Just a quick aside here. We were in and out of the island of St. Lucia for years, and there's a little old concrete building downtown, and it says the Andrew Carnegie Library, and it's a little half step out of the icky road. That is so, I mean, that is out of the way.
Well, he certainly spread his libraries everywhere.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And we have parishioners who are so incredibly generous that I think there are probably lots of rich people who we're going to bump into in heaven still wearing their fur coats and diamonds. Because I don't think you have to be poor to be generous and rich toward God. I'll bet you can be rich toward God and live in a pretty swanky neighborhood.
Well, yeah, as long as you give of your abundance to help other people.
Sure.
Sure.
When you're not helping people, then I don't think you're doing what God
Yeah.
wants you to do.
Exactly.
So yeah, the more money, if you can help more people, that would be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like Bill Gates gave a couple of $1 million to somebody the other day. I thought, well, that was nice of him. Of course, he has billions, but giving somebody a couple of $1 million is nothing to sneeze at.
Right.
So yeah, I agree. I think rich people can indeed make their way into heaven, but like Jesus says, it's a little harder because of the temptations they have, I guess. If I have $1 million, do I want to buy a Ferrari? I don't think I could buy it for $1 million, but I don't know. I never look at those. I look at Kias and Toyotas and Fords and Chevys because I know I cannot afford a Ferrari like Magnum used to drive.
One of the things that in the last 2 weeks, if you've been reading your bulletin, is all these people that have ended up here and need furniture.
Mhm.
etc. And are we
Once
looking?
again, Jody
And-
Taylor is working on that. Jody Green is working on that.
I mean, look around the house and see what you can give up.
Mhm.
Yeah, one of our friends just decided to downsize in her house, and she gave her a whole truck full of furniture to take for the Afghan refugees that are coming into Jacksonville. So Jody is building up some good stuff up in heaven, I'm telling you. I don't know about me. Well, I'm sorry if this was not up to your general standard. I just haven't done this in a long time. Well, I watched 5 of these last weekend, and I thought they all did a great job. Yeah, I know. It's like, but, and then I watched 2 in person, so not bad. I enjoyed it.
Well, it was, I'm sorry we couldn't make all of it, but I've enjoyed what I've heard.
Well,
Thank you so
kind sir.
much.
So
Oh,
that
thank
I
you.
will,
Thank you.
just so I have a take home here, our riches should be used to heal the world,
Yes, to repair the world.
repair the world.
That's material wealth,
Yeah.
not just money, but other things.
Mhm.
And also, you got to give of your time, your heart, your skill. And sometimes you need to balance that, So it's not easy to be God's people. Like she said earlier when I read her quote, it's just a constant progress you make, I feel like I'm more advanced as a Christian now than I was when I was attending Marietta Baptist Church back in the day. But I hope that's true. I hope that's true. Oh, that's true for all of us.
Thank you very much for your preparation tonight on your paper instead of on your note cards.
I know, no coats are too much easier to contain. Paper gets away from you.
We will meet next week, which is actually our last of the parables classes.
Oh, I thought this was nice.
Megan Cochran will be the presenter, and she is talking on the wedding banquet, the feast. The following week, no classes will meet at the cathedral. The yoga, the art, no classes will meet because December 15th is the night of the parish holiday potluck, which we were not able to have last year.
Yeah.
But this year, with many people being vaccinated, we are going to have it again and looking forward to that. And so for that reason, that's why we're not meeting on the 15th. So next week will be our last of the parables classes.
Wow.
All of you joining us online and joining us in person, and hope to see you again next week. So
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you for your
Thank you,
kind
Michael.
reception.
Thank you.
Bye, Michael.